When I was a teenager in the early 90s, I was enthralled by Whose Line Is It Anyway? Originally a British improvisational TV comedy show in which the points don't matter and the comedy is made up on the spot. I absolutely loved watching Ryan Stiles, Colin Mockery, Josie Lawrence, and Greg Proops think on their feet and all the crazy improvisational shenanigans that ensued.
And the improvisational scene is mugging. There's a mugging going on. You have that in America, don't you?
Yes.
Oh, it's the right.
Church.
Okay.
Give me your money. Sorry, I'm new.
Oh. You have to be more forceful. You see, I could have just
Give me your
walked
money.
by. No, Mom.
Give me it now.
My favorite games that they did were questions only, in which the improvisers could only use questions and not make any statements.
What are you doing here, Gary?
Why do you ask?
What are you doing around these parts?
Isn't it obvious?
Have you come about Shirley?
Is the Pope Catholic?
Hoedown, where they created a brand new song on the spot that was both funny and rhymed.
When I go to sleep at night, you know my biggest fear, that walking around my room is some sort of creature.
And foreign film dub with its hilarious made-up translations of pure gibberish. At the time, my 12-year-old brain could not fathom how the improvisers were able to instantly produce side-splitting, coherent narratives out of thin air. I often wondered to myself, did these improvisers simply have better brains than the rest of us? And were their performances really created on the spot? Or did they prepare scripts and gags ahead of time? Fast forward a few decades, and I now know the answer to these questions. After studying improv comedy myself for a number of years, I can now attest to the fact that 1, good improvisers make optimal use of normal cognitive abilities. They're not smarter, they're just better trained. And 2, most improv shows are indeed completely spontaneous and unplanned. But improvisers are supported by a handful of powerful improv principles that help them create scaffolding and produce hilarious original scenes. And it turns out that some of these very same principles can also be used in language learning to speak more fluently and with more confidence. Here are the top 3 improv principles that you can use in your own language learning adventure. Number 1, listen, don't plan. Most of us don't listen very well when we're having conversations. As the other person is talking, the vast majority of our cognitive capacity is dedicated to planning what we're going to say next, trying to come up with a witty reply, and scanning for pun opportunities. Or maybe that's just me. While we can usually get away with this bad habit in our first language, this is a surefire way to miss the message and fall behind in a foreign language context. Instead, try to give your complete focus to the following when you're having conversations. First, what your interlocutor, or the person you're speaking with, is actually saying in the moment. Try not to get distracted with unknown words or unfamiliar grammar structures. Just focus on the gist of what they're saying. And 2, focus on nonverbal cues like body language, hand gestures, facial expressions, etc. These can actually express a lot of meaning and tend to tell you what the person is really thinking or feeling, not just what they want you to think they are thinking or feeling. But I know what you're probably thinking. If you don't plan ahead, how will you know what to say? This brings us to principle number 2. Talk, don't think. One of the most important improv principles that I learned in my classes is to speak off the cuff without fear or filters. In improv, you are trained to say the first thing that comes to mind based on what the other person has just said or what the scene calls for. While the result is often funny, your goal is actually not comedy, but moving the scene along or helping create a believable, or at least internally believable world. Now, in the real world, your goal is obviously to communicate, not to entertain. But this approach is still a powerful ally in language learning. So instead of second guessing yourself, overanalyzing, or trying to remember a certain word or grammar rule, just start moving your mouth. Trust your instincts and just try to use whatever words and structures you can at that time. Even at a relatively low level in a language, you will often be amazed how often you produce accurate or at least comprehensible utterances, despite, or I would argue thanks to, a lack of conscious monitoring. You can see this exact process at work when you or other people have a few adult beverages. Alcohol inhibits the prefrontal cortex, which in turn lowers your inhibitions and reduces performance anxiety, though at the steep price of potentially harming long-term health, of course. Fortunately, improv principles can train you to speak quickly with calm confidence without the need to imbibe any ethanol. And lastly, try to stick to the golden rule of improv. Yes, and. You've probably heard this before. The phrase basically means that you instantly accept whatever the other person has just said, however silly or wacky or improbable. This is the yes part. And then you build upon it with another piece of information. This is the and part. In improv, this principle helps keep scenes moving along and ensures that no time or utterances are wasted in unuseful disagreement. Its opposite, no but, is a total scene killer that every new improviser is quickly taught to avoid like the plague. Now, improvisers don't necessarily say yes and out loud, but they try to maintain that sentiment in their heads, endeavoring to believe that whatever comes out of their scene partner's mouth is true, at least for the sake of that scene. So how does this help you speak a language more fluently? Yes and thinking enables you to quickly expand your comfort zone, meet people where they are, consider new ideas and values, and have more flowing, fluent conversations. Now, this doesn't mean you can't have polite disagreements once in a while or offer an alternative point of view. Both are, of course, part of real-life communication. But just try to resist the knee-jerk impulse to automatically disagree or refute what the other person has said, especially when those ideas or values don't line up perfectly with your own. In fact, a skilled improviser or communicator can indirectly disagree with somebody, but frame the rebuttal in affirmative language. This is better received, keeps things flowing, and just might make the other person rethink their own ideas and beliefs. So there you have it. 3 powerful improv principles that will help you speak a foreign language more fluently, have more flowing conversations, and become a better listener, and dare I say better person, even in your native language. So to quickly review, number 1, fully engage with what's being said in the moment, focusing on the gist and nonverbal cues. 2, speak without overthinking. Let the words flow and trust your instincts. And number 3, embrace and build upon what's been said to keep conversations flowing. And if you want to keep your language learning journey flowing and want to learn some more principles from nostalgic TV hits, check out this video in which I share 3 principles from MacGyver that will help you master any language and speak with more confidence.